Today I'm going to be starting on my 1/20th scale wooden B model semi-truck and trailers. This is a plan put out by Aschi's workshop. That might be the best side to show, and we'll see how long it takes to do. We'll move on to the drop saw where I cut up the smaller pieces. I have a jig set up on my drop saw that I can measure it out and do repeatable cuts on small pieces, and this is what I will be using to cut up the smaller pieces for the prime mover. The easiest way for me to do it is to bring the saw down to the line where I want it to cut, hold it there. I can slide this plate here up to the end, and that will then give me repeatable cuts of the same size time after time. Watch your ears. Does help if I put that little clamp down. It stops the piece that's cut blowing everywhere. And there you have it, two identical cut pieces. Now what you see in front of you is a full set out for the prime mover for the chassis and motor only. There's enough here for 4 prime movers. I'll be doing one each for my 4 grandsons. Hope they enjoy them. In the foreground you can see one of the side steps roughly just put together. So what I'll be doing next is I'll be giving them all a sand, shaping the bottom parts where I need to cut the corners off or sand them off, and then it'll be a lengthy process of gluing it all up, waiting for the next day to start doing more with them. I'll keep you going. Before I finish gluing the undercarriage onto the chassis rail, I need to first finish drilling out the axle holes on these axle blocks. I've set up my homemade fence with a stop block and a clamp there to keep the fence in one place, so that I just need to put that up, hold it in place. By the way, I've also set the drill stop to using a brad bit to just puncture the other side. The reason for that is when you start drilling you take your time and you don't get any chip out on the outside edge. By the time you go through it, you come back and you've just got a little puncture hole here. The point of the brad bit will fit into that puncture hole, and once again a slow entry into it to stop any chip out, and you end up with a perfect hole straight through. I have already checked the drill to the table, and that's at a 90-degree angle, so everything's right to go. You can just see the little pinprick of a hole through to the other side. I'll reset my stop block when I come to do that, and same with the one on the other end. I'll reset the stop lock so that they're all perfect. I also normally have my vacuum set up to suck all this dust up, the sawdust, but if I was to turn that on beside the camera, you would not hear a word I say. Alright, I'll just continue on with what I'm doing, and I'll set the hose up. And there you have it. Perfect hole alignment is spot on, straight through, there's no chip out on the outside edges. I'll continue with the rest. I've got the rear axle blocks, and I've also got the front wheel axle block to carry on with. Okay, I'm about to start gluing up the axle blocks underneath the bottom of the chassis rail so that they will end up like that. And once that happens, that piece will go up there, and that piece will go up there just as a bit of trim. As you can see, the ants have moved in here today. Those two pieces will be a piece like that on each side at the front of the axle. So, let's start. No need to skimp on the glue, you can always scrape it off later. And if it dries and it's in the way, sand it off. And this goes a 12 millimeters back from the back edge, so I'll use this spacer for alignment. Give it a push down to help it bond. And that should stay in place. We'll do the front block. As I say, I'm doing 4 of these units at once. Make sure the axle hole goes to the front. Now this is a long chassis rail, it's 432 millimeters long. It accommodates the long haul sleeper cabin, which we will get to later. There's 3 versions of this prime mover. There's one without a sleeper cabin at all. There's one with a day sleeper for overnighters, and then there's the long haul sleeper cabin that I'll be putting on this one. And then you just put that aside to dry. Push it down at the end, close it off. I have a little jar that I stand my glue bottle in, where it keeps the glue down at the nozzle the whole time. And this is about as exciting as watching paint dry. I don't know if anyone noticed that underneath the bottom axle housing here, you may have picked up the word bottom. It may have been upside down, maybe too hard to read for the camera. That's because I've sanded the other side, because half of that will be exposed to the clear varnish, and I just wanted a good wooden finish there, unblemished. Well, that's it for now until that glue dries, before I can sand them off, trim off the glue, and then apply these two pieces each side of the front axle. What I may do now is to go ahead and probably cut up some more little bits like doors and window struts and panels, and see how we go. What I'm about to do now is to put the front side plates up beside the front axle on the chassis. As you can see, the chassis undercarriage has been glued in place, sanded smooth, glue traces are gone, and now we're ready to do this one. And what I've got here is just a short piece of dowel that fits the holes like that, and I'll use that to align these little holes with the axle hole as I glue it together. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay, start by putting the axle through there, and then match it up to the hole in the chassis block. Push it together, a bit of a clamp with your fingers, mount the other side plate, and we end up with that. The axle turns so it's nicely lined up, and we'll do the same with the other side. We'll push that through, marry that up with the other hole on the other side, push it together. This dowel moves freely, so it's not glued in place, it's lined up. Put the other side plate on and clamp it tightly with your fingers for the glue to bind on. And that is all that is required. That's pretty good to me. My next step is to start cutting out the mudguards, or what people in other countries call fenders. Not sure which way is going to read this best for you. And what I've done here is I've got the pattern and I've put it on a little thin piece of MDF. What I'm going to be doing is making patterns for myself for the future. So in order to do that, I've used a cheap PVA just to glue the pattern to the MDF. You'll get the cheaper PVA glues at the dollar stores around the place. On the back I've put painter's tape. What I'm going to be doing is making my own double-sided tape using super glue, cyano acrylate glue, and I'll also be using an accelerator to set it off faster. So what I'll do is I'll spread the glue on one side, just use a piece of scrap wood to spread that around. Got to go all the way to the edges. And on the other side I'll be spraying the accelerator. Got a sticky cap on this one. And that should do it. Just line it up where I want the pattern to be on the block of wood underneath. This will allow me to do 4 patterns for the future, and also cut out 4 mudguards at the same time, which is enough for 2 trucks. Just hold that down for a sec, and as you can see, that has set. The timber I've used is 19mm and 12mm glued together to give me roughly 30mm thickness for the mudguards. And that's being that, I'll give this a few minutes, then I'll take it over to the scroll saw and very slowly and carefully cut all around here. You can cut the headlights out as a separate piece, but I will be electing to leave it there as one piece. It makes it a lot easier to cut. Thank you.